So we're going to continue along with the four models, and in this segment we will talk about runaway selection and sensory exploitation. And so what we're looking at here is runaway selection, and these are stalk-eyed flies, so the eyes are actually at the end of these long stalks. And they're looking at this trying to make sense, and it seems like the females preferred the longer stalks. And what they found is if they took females and bred them with longer stalk eyed males, that's what they ended up with, is over generations. I think they did like 13 generations. The eyes got longer, and or the stalks got longer and longer. They also found out that if they bred them with short stalked males, that the stalks actually got shorter. So the critical finding on this, what they came up with, is the positive link between the eye stalk length, which is genetic, was really tied to the preference of the females. So there was probably no direct benefit genetically. It was just, this is what the females like. And they found this, and I couldn't find the pictures of it, but they had these little finches. And it turned out the finches liked this little kind of decorative feather on their head. And so what they ended up doing was gluing bigger and bigger feathers on tops of these little tiny birds' heads. And the females would breed with the ones with this very, very large feather just kind of glued the top of the head. It made no sense. The bird was not genetically any better. It just seemed to be again, the female's preference. And then sensory exploitation. It turns out on this one, it's really not kind of something that allows something to maintain being there. It's more something on how something showed up. And so we've seen these frogs before, the Tungara frogs. They have the wine chuck, and we saw the ones with the bats, where the bats came in, that they would stop doing the one sound that the bats could hear. Well, what they found out in these frogs was that the whine is very high pitched and the chuck is a low frequency. The females preferred the males that would whine chuck over the ones that just whined. And so then there was these other groups of frogs that had never heard the chuck before. So they really, at some point, really didn't respond, were never exposed to it. Well, what they did is the minute they actually introduced that chuck sound, the females loved it, and that's who they started to pick for their mates. So it turns out that the females have this inbred liking of that lower frequency sound. Now, again, it wasn't being selected for because it didn't exist. But the minute it showed up, that's what the females liked. So this is sensory exploitation. And then the last thing, so those are the four models. So what we want to talk about here is male-male competition and sexual selection. And so males will compete, and there's different ways of doing this. Now, the problem is if you go straight to fighting, you get injured, you can't mate. So reality, and we'll talk about predator and prey and some other stuff, but you don't want to be hurt. And so red deer have come up, and a lot of the deer species have come up with these elaborate rituals to reduce actual conflict. And so the red deer have this idea of fight at the last resort. It's let's try, if you're a male, let's try to discourage the other male from challenging you. And so what happens with the red deer is the first thing they do is this roar contest. They scream at each other. And typically the one with the bigger roar, the louder roar, the lower roar is the one that wins. And the other male will just kind of walk away. The roar doesn't take all that much energy. I mean, it does take some energy, but it doesn't, there's no real problem of getting hurt by, roaring, I guess. If that doesn't do it, then what the males will do is what they call a parallel walk. And the parallel walk then is where they walk next to each other and kind of size each other up. And then if nobody backs down on the parallel walk, what you then get is the actual fight. And so that is what we're talking about here. And we even see that in humans. If you ever paid attention, typically two males, the first thing to do is start, puffing up their chest, trying to make themselves look bigger, start screaming at each other. If that doesn't work, they may even, walk toward each other and again, the chest go out like, hey, I'm a badass. And then if nobody backs down, the fight begins. But it's all ritual. It's all hoping that they will go on. And it turns out, there is a home court advantage. So the red deer that actually are on habitat or territory with a harem are more likely to win the roar contest or the parallel walk than one that's not. And the idea is, hey, this is my house. I'm feeling. I got my peeps over here. I've got my females. I'm more apt to try to defend it stronger. All right, and you also see this in interference. You see this in elephant seals. If you've never had the chance, you should head up the coast, up by Hearst Castle, up above Santa Barbara, below San Francisco. There's an area where the elephant seals are year-round. And these guys, the dominant males, are huge, and they fight over females. You can see that over there on the right. And it turns out that the males will interfere with copulation in other males. So females want to be bred by the dominant males because they believe that's the chance of getting the best pups, the more that'll survive. So they want more copulations by the alpha male. The beta males, but the alpha male, as he's fighting and as he's trying to take care of his large harem, there are chances where females are unprotected on the edges, and so the lesser males will go in and try to mount the females. Well, it turns out the females will actually call out and they will protest the copulation, and that sound will often bring another male in to disrupt or interfere with the breeding process. So it turns out the dominant males are the ones that are breeding with the majority of the females, and the pups the next year are typically more than, at least, they say that more of the individuals are from the alpha male. And then there's cockatoo, where you kind of sneak in and cheat. And the bluegills, they have different strategies of reproducing. And there's really three. There's the parental males. They're the ones that build the nest. They tend to be the biggest, kind of what we would call maybe the alpha of the fish, I guess. And the females are attracted to them, and life is good. But there's also sneaker males. They are smaller and less aggressive. They don't hold territories, but they kind of hang off on the edges, and they will try to sneak in and fertilize the female when the male's not looking. And then we also have what's called satellite males, and these look like females. And so the male's swimming around, and he's trying to have sex. And then what happens is this male, that looks like a female comes in, and the male's great. He goes, I got two women. I'm all that. And then as the female starts laying her eggs, the satellite male will very quickly dump his sperm out, also hoping to fertilize some of the eggs. All right, and it's also not just done in fish, or it's also done in insects. Here's a springtail, and they leave spermatophores. So what they're doing is they're not actually having sex per se. They're leaving these little spermatophores, these little packages of sperm, and you can see them on the stalk. And what happens is then the females will come and pick these things up. So what they have is, if you have a single male by itself, it's producing a ton of these little spermatophores. But it turns out if you offer a second male who's also providing spermatophores, the spermatophores, the male puts out fewer. And you think, well, maybe you want to put out more to try to override how many are out there. But the more you put out, the less quality they have, the less attractive they are. And so the male's decision then is, I'm going to put out fewer but more quality spermatophores. And it turns out if you have two males, but one is not reproductive or putting out spermatophores, the male goes right back to the cheat ground. So it turns out, you know, if females have a choice, they would go to treatment too. Obviously, they want quality, not quantity, and so that's where they go. But sometimes that's not an option. And so this is the idea of you know, cheating in an area. And then we have sperm competition. And there's all kinds of stuff out here. These are damselflies, you know, dragonflies, damselflies. Damselflies actually have a structure, so when they go in and they mate, they actually will clear out the other sperm, and they can get the females to actually expel the semen. And so you can see this little hook-like thing. They'll go in and clean out. So if the female has bred with another male, they'll try to get as much of that sperm out as possible. And then it turns out the animals will actually compete. It turns out in gorillas and chimps, when there's multiple males, the males will produce more sperm, and their testicles get larger. In wood mice, their sperm have little barbs on it that have them hooked together, and so you have these clumps of sperm that actually act as blocking device, and they're actually streamlined, so they will move in a certain direction quicker. And then you have certain snails that have what's called perisperm. They're not fertile. They're blocker sperm. They have lysosomes, and if you don't know basic bio, that puts out digestive enzymes. So they're trying to eat the other sperm, or at least digest, like throwing acid on it. And there's this kind of the kamikaze sperm hypothesis that you have sperm that sacrifice themselves for the better of the group, and they're killer sperm. And this theory has been around for a while, and actually was suggested in humans, and that has not been proven, and actually has been kind of debunked at this point. There's been no proof that human males have kamikaze sperm. Some of the sperm is just lazy sperm. You know, just like you guys are lazy, so are your sperm, I guess. And that will end this recording.